listening to Rated RX. Your dose for the day.
Could a bottle of Coke actually increase your testosterone? That's the wild claim that came from a new study that had the internet absolutely buzzing. The headline was that Coca-Cola and Pepsi boosted testicle size and testosterone in mice. And as you can probably guess, the internet went nuts, pun intended. News outlets grabbed it, influencers were talking about it, and for a second there, it seemed like the secret to sky-high testosterone levels was hiding in the nearest vending machine. I'm Robbie, here with Sam and Xavier. We're your hosts and pharmacists of Rated RX, and we got your dose for the day. Here we dive into trending health topics to shed light on facts and the real-world impacts on what it means. Rated RX is a proud affiliate of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. Please check out their site for other awesome healthcare topics and info. Guys, right now we're giving out a free medication adherence PDF and video course walkthrough simply by subscribing to our website. If you want this course, again, absolutely for free, be sure to head to www.ratedrxmedia.com and subscribe. Is there any truth to this? Is chugging a soda the key to unlocking some new level of manhood? We looked at the science. We found it's not what you guys think it is. When you look at the research on actual humans, it tells a very different story, and that's the part the headlines left out. So to figure out what's really going on, we have to start with the study that kicked off all this chaos. It's easy to get confused by headlines, so let's get crystal clear on what the researchers actually did and what they found.
The study was published in the Journal of Acta Endocrinologica in 2022 by a group of researchers in China. They wanted to see how carbonated drinks affected male fertility in mice. So they set up an experiment where for 15 days, they gave different groups of mice different things to drink. You had your control group, which was water. Then you had your test groups. One got a 50-50 mix of Coke and water and another 100% Coke. They did the same thing with Pepsi. And then over these 15 days, they tracked the mice, weighed them, and checked their hormone levels. Now, here's the part that blew up online and everyone was talking about. At the end of the experiment, the scientists found some pretty shocking things. The mice drinking 100% Coke and 100% Pepsi showed surprising changes compared to the controlled water drinking group.
First, their testicles were larger. The study reported that the mass of the testes was significantly higher in some of the soda drinking groups. And second, this is the big one, their serum testosterone went up. The study significantly noted that serum testosterone in the 100% Pepsi group was higher than the control group. The researchers concluded that drinking these sodas could promote testes growth and improve testosterone secretion in male mice. They even suggested that their work provided a scientific basis for understanding how these drinks affect human reproduction. You can see why this went viral. It's the perfect recipe for sensational headlines. It takes something we all know, a can of Coke, and links it to something a lot of men like to think about, their testosterone levels. Plus, it completely flipped what we've been told about soda on its head. The idea is that this guilty pleasure might secretly boost your testosterone levels was just too good to pass up.
And so the media, they just ran with it. Headlines popped up everywhere, all shouting the same basic message. Drinking Coke and Pepsi increases testosterone. It was like wishful thinking confirmed. But that's where the story should have stopped. And the real question should have been started. Because before you rush out to buy a 12-pack, there are huge reasons why these findings in mice tell a completely different story for you, the human.
This is where the viral hype slams into the scientific reality. Everything we've talked about so far is the grain of truth. It's what the mouse study did find. The study is real, but the conclusions people drew from it, That's where it sort of falls apart. There were a few massive critical problems with taking this mouse study and applying it to your own life. And the biggest one can be summed up in 4 words. Men are not mice. It's the golden rule of this kind of research. An animal study, especially on rodents, is often a starting point for science, not a finish line for human health advice. They can be useful for exploring ideas, but they're not just a reliable preview of what's happening in humans. The history of medicine is filled with cures that worked perfectly for mice, but failed or even caused harm in human trials. There's a joke in the research community, I'm told. It's, if you're a mouse, we can cure you of almost anything. That's because our physiology is different. Our metabolism is different. A 15-day study for a mouse is a significant chunk of its life. But it doesn't translate perfectly to our much longer lifespan and our vastly different lifestyle.
Plus, to point out, these lab mice, again, controlled cages, eating controlled diet, where there's only one thing that's changed, and that was their drink. We're talking about this example. Humans being, obviously, as you just said, the chaos of genetics, different markers, lifestyles, diets, stress, million other things that we're trying to control for these hormones. You can't just isolate one thing like soda and expect to have that same effect.
Right. Think of it this way. A race car runs on a high octane racing fuel. But if you pour that fuel into your family car, it's not going to break any track records. You're going to destroy the engine. The systems are different. So when you see a headline based on a mouse study, your first reaction should always be skepticism, not excitement.
So if the mouse study is questionable at best, what happens when we look at studies on actual humans? What does the research on men, not mice, say about soda and testosterone?
And there's your plot twist. The big studies on thousands of humans, men, have shown the exact opposite.
The most important piece of evidence comes from a huge, respected project run by the CDC. It's called the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, or NHANES, NAHANES, and it's the gold standard for this type of data.
In a study published in Reproductive Biology and Endocrinology, researchers looked at data from 545 men from ages of 20 to 39, basically the prime age for healthy testosterone. We're still in that group. Whoop, whoop. They grouped the men based on how many sugary sweet beverages they had, or SSBs, they called it, like Coke and Pepsi that they drink. What they found was actually a clear link. The more sugary drinks a man had, the higher his chances were of having lower testosterone. Let's get specific here. The guys in the highest consumption group, drinking about 442 calories or more of sugary drinks a day, were more than twice as likely to have low testosterone compared to the guys who drank the least. Let me say that again, because it's the most important part here. The highest intake of sugary soda was linked to more than double the risk of having clinically low testosterone in young men. This was true even after researchers accounted for things like age, BMI, physical activity. This wasn't a small thing. This was a major statistical link. And it's not just that one study. Another huge project using data from UK Biobank looked at hundreds of thousands of people. It found that the higher intake of fructose, the main sugar in many sodas, was associated with lower levels of this key protein called sex hormone binding globulin, or SHGB, in men.
So now we have a big conflict. In one corner, a small short-term study and a handful of mice says soda boosts your testosterone, and the other, large-scale data from thousands of humans saying soda is linked to a much higher risk of low testosterone.
When you're faced with that, which evidence do you trust for your own health? The answer is obvious. The human data is overwhelmingly more relevant. The conclusion from the human evidence is clear. Regularly drinking sugary soda is a risk factor for lower testosterone, not a strategy for boosting it.
So that leads us to the next big question. Why? If the human data is so clear that soda is bad for testosterone, what is going on here? The answer has nothing to do with any secret ingredients in Coca-Cola and everything to do with one thing: sugar. The connection between tons of sugar and low testosterone is well established, and it works in a few powerful ways. First, the most obvious is the link between sugar, weight gain, and hormones. Sugary drinks are the biggest source of added sugar for a lot of people. They're basically empty calories, meaning they pack a huge caloric punch with zero nutrition and really no benefit. This makes them a major driver of weight gain and obesity. And that's where the hormonal trouble starts. Fat tissue isn't just sitting there, it is hormonically active. Your fat cells produce an enzyme called aromatase. Aromatase's job is to convert your testosterone into estrogen. The more aromatase you have, the more your testosterone gets pumped into that primary sex, female sex hormone. And it's a vicious cycle. High sugar leads to more fat leads to more aromatase, and more aromatase leads to lower testosterone levels and higher estrogen levels. That hormonal shift then makes it even easier to gain more fat, and the cycle keeps spiraling down. The NHANES study even confirmed that being overweight or obese was a powerful independent risk factor for low testosterone.
And there's also a second problem, insulin resistance. So when you constantly hit your body with those high doses of sugar from soda, pancreas is having to pump out insulin like crazy to control those levels. Over time, your cells can start ignoring that signal, and that insulin resistance is one of those stepping stones to type 2 diabetes. And that insulin resistance is strongly linked to lower testosterone levels in men. And in fact, studies have shown that giving a man a big dose of sugar, basically a soda bomb, as we're talking here, can cause an immediate, significant drop in testosterone levels. So every time you chug a sugary drink, you might be tanking your testosterone levels right then and there.
The overwhelming evidence points to sugar as the real villain here. The massive load of high fructose corn syrup, or sucrose, in a typical can of Coke directly fuels two of the conditions most known to crush male testosterone: obesity and insulin resistance.
Now, this is where someone defending the mouse study might say, okay, fine, sugar's bad, but what about the caffeine? Couldn't that be what boosted the testosterone in mice? And that is a fair question, and it's probably one piece of the puzzle that explains the strange results in those mice. But the link between caffeine and testosterone is also complicated. There is some evidence that a short-term, or what we like to say acute, dose of caffeine can give you a temporary testosterone boost. One study on athletes found that taking caffeine before a workout bumped up their testosterone. But, and it's a big but, not like a big butt, but it's a big butt.
A big butt.
In that same study, caffeine spiked cortisol, the body's main stress hormone. This is really important for building muscle and overall health. As we said, your testosterone to cortisol ratio is often the more important than your testosterone levels alone. If testosterone goes up a little, but cortisol shoots way up, you're actually worse off for building up muscle. Now, cortisol is catabolic, so it breaks things down, including muscle tissue. Chronically high cortisol can stress, bad sleep, or too many stimulants actively working against your body's ability to produce testosterone.
So that would bring us back to the daily caffeine use. While one dose might give you that temporary lift that Zay was talking about, what happens when you're drinking the caffeinated sodas every day, every morning, every afternoon? Some analysis of the NHANES data had suggested a complex nonlinear relationship where high chronic caffeine intake may actually be associated with those lower testosterone levels.
Why? A big reason is the connection between caffeine, cortisol, and sleep. Caffeine stays in your system for hours. If you're drinking it all day, especially in the afternoon or evening, it can wreck your sleep quality. and your body produces most of its testosterone while you're in a deep sleep. If your soda habit is messing with your sleep, you are directly sabotaging your own hormone production.
So, could caffeine explain the mouse study? Maybe. It's possible that for 15 days, the mice got the stimulant effect and their simple biological system led them to a temporary testosterone boost, but it is much more complex than the human body. The long-term picture is totally different. Any teeny temporary boost you might get from caffeine is completely steamrolled by the massive long-term hormonal damage from sugar that comes along with it. Focusing on caffeine and soda is like complimenting the warm glow of your house while it's on fire. You're missing the bigger picture. The claim that drinking Coke or Pepsi increases your testosterone level is based on a single study in mice. While it's an interesting finding for scientists, it's practically useless and dangerously misleading for human health advice. It's directly contraindicated by a much larger and more reliable body of evidence from human studies. That human evidence is clear. Regularly drinking sugar-sweetened sodas is strongly linked to higher risk of testosterone level in men. This is driven by a huge sugar content that promotes obesity and insulin resistance, two of the biggest killer in healthy testosterone levels. Any teeny fleeting benefit from caffeine is wiped out by hormonal damage from sugar. So, if sugar is the real villain, is Diet Coke the secret weapon for testosterone? Now, the research is a bit murky. While they don't have the sugar, there's a big ongoing debate, as Sam mentioned, about the long-term health effects of these artificial sweeteners like aspartame. Some research suggests they might negatively impact gut health or even disrupt hormones in other ways. But us being humans, the evidence isn't clear as it is for sugar. It's probably best to see diet sodas as the lesser of two evils, so keep drinking it, but don't think of it as a healthy drink. Water, unsweetened tea, black coffee are always better choices. The bottom line is this. No, drinking soda will not increase your testosterone. The real world evidence in humans shows it's far more likely to do the exact opposite. The viral study was a classic case of media hype, blowing a small animal study way out of proportion while ignoring the human data that tells the real story. Now, it's easy to get lost in all the conflicting health headlines. One day, food is good for you. The next, it's not. Then all of a sudden, they change the food pyramid, all because of politics. Now, the whole soda and testosterone story is a perfect example of why you have to be a critical thinker. You have to look past the crazy headlines, ask where the claim is coming from, and most importantly, ask if the evidence even applies to you. Instead of looking for a magic fix in a soda can, the real world to support your hormonal health is maybe, unsurprisingly, all these fundamentals we talked about. It's not flashy, but it works. Focused on a balanced diet with whole foods, quality protein, high fat, cut back and eliminate those sugary drinks, processed junk food, get regular exercise, especially resistance training. Prioritize your 9 to 7 hours of great sleep every night. That is non-negotiable for your hormones. And finally, manage your stress to keep that testosterone killing cortisol in check. These are the pillars of hormonal health. They don't make for a sexy headline, I know, but they are the foundation for a long, healthy, and vital life. So now, we want to hear from you guys. What is the craziest health headline you've ever fallen for? I've fallen for some. What have you fallen for? Drop it in the comments below, whether that's on our podcast page or YouTube page. Drop it below. We want to hear from you. For more videos and breakdowns of the real science behind the health news, make sure you subscribe, hit that notification bell. Don't forget to head to ratedrxmedia.com for your free medication adherence guide video. Guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you again next week. We are out.
Rated RX, you're doing